Hey everyone, when they're here, and this is part 2 of the quick 3-part video series that I'm doing, kind of like an updated feedback for PvP. I wanted to go through everything in a more precise manner now that things have changed. So this video will focus solely on the Sandbox. So I'm a part of what I guess would be considered the vocal minority that the base Destiny 2 Sandbox is probably the most balanced sandbox Destiny 2 has had as a whole, barring a few exceptions or outliers. It's something more and more that larger content creators have spoken up about, players such as Dado, Triple, or Miss 5000 Watts, that the base quick play experience is great, but there's just something lacking that gives it that spice Destiny 1 had long term. Two major things contribute to this, one being game modes in the game, and the other being exceptions in the sandbox itself. So the first part of this video, talking about game modes, is Destiny 2 currently suffers playlist-wise from a lack of objective-focused game modes. There are currently too many game modes in Destiny 2 that focus on Slayer or Team Deathmatch-based modes. The one true objective mode Destiny 2 has, being Lockdown, is also currently not in the competitive playlist and is bound to a 5-week rotation for the weekly. It'd be nice to see more true objective modes in the game as a whole. Modes like Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, Rift, returning with revamped scoring, all would be great additions to the current game state. In addition, it would be amazing to see Rift in a Capture the Flag version of Rift. Since Rift at its base is more of a neutral bomb game mode, it'd be sick to steal an enemy's ball from their spawn or their Rift, and then needing you to carry it home to dunk in your own Rift as a version of CTF, and I think that would be possible with the way that Destiny 2 plays. I do want to make a quick minor note that certain modes in private matches, to try and make them more competitive, like Lockdown, currently changing the respawn times doesn't really do anything, as it keeps it at a base of 10, so that's something that also needs to be looked at, because as we are working to make a more competitive rule set, it's really hard for us to get Lockdown to work, as every time we change respawns, it's still stuck at 10, just for base game flow. But back on the point of modes, I just think that it would still be bad long term for the game to individualize playlists, such as only Control, only Clash, etc., as that would split too many players up, but it would be nice to see more general group playlists, especially with the game going free to play. An example I have of this is you can have what I would consider the always around playlists. So that would be Quick Play, which is your 6v6 Control, Clash, what I call Casual Rift, which is just Rift with the old school scoring, and then a new Sixes game mode. You can then have Comp, where you have your 4v4 Countdown Survival, Lockdown Clash, or Insert New Objective mode that enters the game. You can have Skirmish, which I really do think it's important that Skirmish returns, and it brings back 3v3 Clash, Salvage, Elimination, Showdown, or King of the Hill can work really well in Skirmish. You can bring a doubles playlist back with the same modes, and then of course you have your Rumble and you have your private matches. And then in addition to that, instead of having one weekly rotating playlist that we have right now, you have two of them. One of them being a team objective focused playlist where you have King of the Hill, Rift, but with more linear scoring. And what I mean by that is you only score on a dunk and it's 1 point. There's no carry points, there's no stoppage points. It's just you score when you get a dunk. Or CTF, your Lockdown. And then the other weekly rotating playlist you can have is what I would call the party playlist. And that's where you have Mayhem, Team Scorched, and whatever other party modes end up coming out over Destiny's lifetime. Skirmish and Comp can coincide as long as Comp has rewards we're shooting for, which, again, the final video will be focused on Comp. This would provide a lot more versatile options, as players one day could be super into Team Objective or Skirmish. And again, with D2 going free to play, this would be huge to kind of bring a refreshing feel to PvP each day and or week. And again, just to reiterate, like Team Objective would have one of those modes rotating each week, and Party would have one of those modes, whereas the Always playlist would have those modes rotating. So the second part of this video, and arguably the longest part, is Sandbox. So the Sandbox, as mentioned, is probably the most balanced sandbox we've had in all of Destiny's lifetime, but there are some minor, some major exceptions that stand out from the rest. I'll just go through the list and explain my reasoning behind each one. So the first point being super armor changes. I understand that this is something that would have to go through further testing, but all supers should die to the following: an adaptive or aggressive sniper headshot, a precision or aggressive shotgun by a body shot charged melee, slug shotguns by a precision hit charged melee, precision or high impact fusions by a full burst or charged melee. What you can do is you can make resilience a fall off point to where adaptive, precision shotguns, and precision fusions would fall off damage wise. An example of this being 7 resilience. Then past that point, the higher impact archetypes would become more important. It would create a real-time feel in needing to know the builds of your opponent and cater more to that MMO light feel Destiny is heading towards. The questions as to if a Warlock would run more melee mods or if a Hunter would focus more on resilience over recovery become a lot more prevalent with this. This would help deepen the current build and mod system that exists in Destiny 2 on top or in addition to another level of what Armor 2.0 is going to provide us later this fall. Weapons like Izanagi or Loaded Questions can also be additional outliers to this, as Izanagi with Honed Edge can help put it past that 7 resilience barrier since it's an adaptive frame, allowing it to still compete with that aggressive, within the aggressive damage numbers. Loaded Question can also fulfill this with a full mag using its perk, allowing more versatility in builds. What this also does is stop the dominance of super mods and roaming supers, bringing them to a bit more reasonable level in the sandbox. It allows a deeper skill gap into when it becomes smart to pop a super or the ability to punish one. And again, just to reiterate, it would be something that would need more testing, like maybe 8 resilience ends up being the sweet spot for this to separate archetypes, because the last thing you would want is everyone just running max resilience instead of actually running these other mods. So it would have to be something done internally on Bungie's side to figure out what the balance of that is, but I do think it's important to make more than one archetype, at least the top 2 versions of each archetype viable, and then have some type of fall off range there. So the second major point is supers. So certain supers are a little bit too dominant in the sandbox, some supers are lacking in the sandbox, and some supers' neutral game is just feeling weak in comparison to the other supers that we have. So I'm just going to go through a list below again, and we'll go through each one. So the first one on this list is Bottom Tree Striker. This super currently gets way too much super back on light attack or shoulder charge kills in its super. It essentially operates as a super with the old Gwizzin vest active without ever needing an exotic armor to get that benefit. Which obviously Gwizzin was a little bit too good, and no super should be able to clear enemies from spawn A, run to the opposite spawn at spawn C, and be rewarded with another team wipe, because no other super really provides that. The second super that needs some love is Top and Bottom Tree Shadow Shot. So both of these trees need to one-shot upon impact. I personally don't understand why they wouldn't, especially with the animation time and the time the player has to invest in the air. Not only are you suspended in air with a non-lethal super, but you have no super armor at all while popping it. This leaves you to essentially be a sitting duck. Top tree one-shotting would allow it more of an initiator trap hybrid, depending on situations, and the bottom tree one-shotting could still retain the damage ramp-up, allowing after 1 kill to counter a super. The same aspect it takes 1 3-shot Goldie or 2 6-shot bullets to kill, Tether should be provided with the same treatment. And on top of this, buffing Tether to one-shot kill won't really put it over Spectral, as Spectral will still be, I would say, easier for a player to use and get kills with, but it at least improves the durability of Shadow Shot in PvP. Third one on the list is Spectral Blade and its True Sight. So Spectral's True Sight is a little bit too advantageous for little to no cost at the moment. It doesn't ask a lot of a player to crouch and get a headshot, nor does it have a viable payoff as a stalker with how long True Sight lasts, even out of Invis's neutral game. My suggestion for the subclass is to, at minimum, remove the True Sight ability out of Invis and shorten the duration True Sight lasts. The class should provide insight, but you should still need to be required, or it still be required to move in on kills to get that chain to continue. It shouldn't be the constant feed of wall hacks as it currently is now. This allows a trade-off as the player needing to communicate with his team as he moves in on opponents, and both True Sight and Gambit Invader hacks share the same common problem at the moment. It then takes away the free use of True Sight and makes it a little bit more lethal and a little bit larger of a skill gap between players. Next item on the list is top and bottom tree Dawnblade. So Dawnblade is the one super where its actual super keeps getting increased or buffed when a lot of the problems revolve around its neutral game. Simply put, Icarus Dash top tree should have a shorter cooldown between use, allowing a bit more movement closer to that of Twilight Garrison of Titans in Destiny 1. And then the bottom tree Phoenix Dive should also have a slight buff to its regen gained. We obviously don't want to create a free Wormhusk-like scenario, but a slight increase to the recovery provided would be huge for this subclass as a whole. I wouldn't even mind tuning the duration Dawnblade kills provide to the subclass down to offset. The neutral game is definitely the larger focus with these two trees versus Dawnblade's actual super duration itself. Next item on the list is Devour's Nova Bomb. Devour just needs a slight increase to blast radius. I understand the trade-off with making Devour too good, but unlike Dawnblade, this is a subclass where the super legitimately needs more love than its neutral game. An increase to blast radius makes this super more of a threat, as too many times throwing a Nova, you only get 1, maybe 2 kills out of it due to its radius or its AoE damage. Other shutdowns like Blade Barrage are a lot more viable to run for this reason because you can cover a wider area of effect. The second to last thing mentioned is Arcstrider's helicopter move. Arcstrider's helicopter move should be reinstated to its middle tree. I originally wanted it back in general, but based on the changes to top and bottom tree, it just fits best with middle tree since middle tree is focused on being an acrobat. With this change allows Arcstrider to have a valid counter to aerial play, as Arcstrider is currently the one roaming super in the game that doesn't really have a valid option to shutting someone down that jumps in the air. Titans have seeking abilities, whether that's the shield throw, shoulder charge, or the AoE hammers. Warlock has its Dawnblade and Storm. Spectral has its AoE heavy attack. Strider just lacks in general. And then the final topic for supers is Golden Gun's top and bottom tree knives need a slight damage buff to return to D1 value. This allows builds such as Ophidius Bait to be a lot more common and would buff the neutral in Golden Gun to make the class more valid outside of its one-off super. Nothing felt better in D1 than hitting a hand cannon shot followed up with a knife to a Guardian's head, and I really do think that needs a return too. So that closes it for supers. We're then going to touch quickly here on the next topic, which is exotics. And there's one glaring exotic in the sandbox that still stands out, unfortunately, and it's One-Eyed Mask. So the major frustration with this exotic is it just provides too many benefits in the sandbox. Even though the damage buff is minimal, the fact it exists with an overshield gain and tracking for 7 seconds is too much, at least for an individual exotic. My short-term suggestion is to remove the damage buff entirely and reduce the health gain to stop at max health and shield, no longer providing an overshield period. This keeps the exotic different from Wormhusk and Foe Tracer, but allowing it to stay in line with the rest of the field. The biggest reason I've seen a lot of Titan players claim that OEM is fine or it's necessary is because of how much other Titan exotics lack, when realistically, One-Eyed Mask is just so good that it puts the other exotics that Titans have into the ground. My long-term suggestion for One-Eyed Mask is to rework the exotic entirely. Allow tracking of a target, and when you confirm that target by killing them, it refreshes the cooldown, so to speak, on when you can begin tracking your next assailant. To offset this benefit, we can reduce the tracking time so it really creates that one-eyed beeline behavior should a player want to invest in that style of aggressive play. This way it relies more on the player's unique skill versus being provided so many buffs that it offsets poor behavior. The off note to this is Titans and Warlocks still lack synergy exotics across their different subclasses compared to Hunter. There have been a lot of improvements and there's been a lot of positives since Forsaken in improving synergy exotics, but just some minor things, like it would be sick to get a Warlock exotic that changes Vortex's Nova Bomb to Lance or Shatter, just as a small example. Titans and Warlocks just still need some love outside of basic movement and melee exotics, and as mentioned, it's gotten better since Forsaken, but there's still some places to go with that. And then some miscellaneous related points to close this video out is it would be nice to see a Sunshot mag increase to 10 rounds in the mag, or include that with its range master work. It would just give this gun a little bit of a bump to be more used than it currently is, as 8 just feels way too small, and all it really provides is explosive rounds. So I don't think that this would make it OP in the sandbox, but it would bring a reliable energy hand cannon up to be used in slot that would have a really sick combination that, you know, a lot of people would enjoy seeing Sunshot moved up. Ace's range on PC is a bit too high in combination with high cal rounds. It just needs to be toned down a little bit to be a little bit more in line. LMGs and 4 burst pulses on PC are too stable and they have too much range. They should have a greater stability kick at long ranges and a general range reduction as a whole. 4 burst pulses especially just make any use of a scout irrelevant, and I'm sure it tie into why scouts just feel so awkward in the sandbox at the moment. And then the final point as a whole for just PC is ARs need some type of love to where it takes less of a crit requirement to get a kill, and they need a little bit of buff to their body shot damage just so they're a little bit more reliable. I think that would help a lot, and it's the same thing that SMGs currently are having a problem with, is outside of Recluse, like your adaptive SMGs like Antiope, just take a little bit too much of a requirement with getting crits versus bodies, and that just needs to be slightly changed around so that those guns can compete in the sandbox, and I think the sandbox would be pretty much near perfect. And then the last major point, which deals more with console, is the console specific side of things. The biggest outlier is hand cannons. They need a visual recoil reduction or a more reasonable recoil direction. The best ones to use on console by far right now are the Austringer, the Rose, and Ace of Spades. Whatever was done to make those guns feel good and the rest of the menagerie guns to feel good needs to be looked at going forward and hopefully prioritized, because it's just a massive difference in terms of how beloved and Austringer feel compared to anything else we've had in previous. So that'll do it for the sandbox related video. I have one video left dealing with competitive, so that'll do that, and I hope to see you guys next time when they're out.